Hey everybody, welcome back. I've got a Yardman snowblower with a Briggs Stratton engine with a broken pull cord. Now this is the engine with the riveted recoil, as you can see right there. Some of them have rivets and some are bolted. Unfortunately, this one is riveted. I get a lot of questions. How do you fix or replace the pull cord on these engines? So there's actually two ways of doing this, guys. You can actually drill out the rivets if you want, take the recoil off, and then put new rivets when you put the recoil back on. I don't do it that way. The reason is because I've seen people do that in the past. The small back end of the rivet fell into where the flywheel is. It's stuck on the magnets and it destroyed the recoil. That's why I don't do it this way. Sure, it's quicker if you drill them out and do the cord. If you can locate the small rivets after, that's good. Then you don't need to do it the way I'm going to show you today. But this way here, I am sure that there's no little rivets floating around in the flywheel area that will get stuck on the coil. All right, I'm going to get right into the process here of doing this. First of all, I will pop the choke knob off with a slotted screwdriver. Just reach underneath and pop it up. Next, I'll remove these two screws here with knobs. And when you put these back on, guys, it's a good idea to put some anti-seize on them because sometimes they can be seized. If these are seized on your engine, you go to take them off and they won't come off. Just grab pliers and force them out. The plastic will break and then you can grind off the top here and drill them out with a 3/16 drill bit and use a 1/4 inch self-tapping bolt after. So this will pop right off. Next, I'll remove the two 10mm nuts here. Take these parts off here. And what I do is I come on the side of the electric starter and take off the small plastic cover here. You will need a 7mm nut driver or a socket with a ratchet. Now, if you don't remove this plastic cover, when you go to remove the cowling here, it will get kind of caught up back here. And there's your starter gear. Okay, so I've tilted the machine up like this. It's a lot easier to do this repair. Now, when you tip the machine up like this, you might get a bit of gas leak out of the carburetor. It's no big deal. Just make sure you're working in a safe environment and make sure you have rags to wipe up the fuel right away. And if your fuel tank is leaking because it's too full, you can bring the machine back down, put a baggie here underneath the fuel cap and screw it back on. It'll stop all the leaks. And don't worry about the oil. It does not cause any issues whatsoever. Once you have it up like this, remove the two small bolts here. You'll need an 8mm socket or nut driver. Now I usually pop this up here to access one of the bolts that holds the cowling. Now once you're at this stage, what you need to do is remove the 3 bolts that hold the cowling to the engine. So if we have a look over here, there's one down there and you'll need a 10mm socket. There's one right down to the right of it at the bottom and then to your left right here. So I'm going to remove these 3 bolts and then we'll go from there. And I'll use my impact here with a 10mm socket. It helps to have the extension. And the 3rd bolt is right here. And it's super tight. The impact won't even take it out. I'll try a ratchet with it, but I'll go easy in case it's seized. I don't want to break the bolt in there. It's pretty tight in there, guys. So this bolt will break in there if I keep going. So what I'll do to get that bolt off is I'll grab my map torch here, heat around the outside where the bolt is bolted in. Also, when you do this, make sure there's no fuel around the area where you're doing this. So all I'm going to do is heat around here where it's bolted on. Okay, let's try that. It did not make any difference. I didn't think I had heated it long enough anyway. No difference. Now when things don't go well with the map torch, I grab my oxyacetylene torch. I've got a very fine tip and I can control better where the flame goes, and it's hotter. See, the flame's not all over the place like the map torch. The only thing you gotta watch with the acetylene is that you don't melt the block or the base of the block there. So what I'm trying to do is heat up where the bolt is bolted. But I will also heat the bolt a little bit. So let's see what happens here. It is stuck in there. It's moving a tiny, tiny bit, but I know if I keep going, I will snap it. It moved a little bit more this time. And it's good to work the bolt back and forth, guys. If it turns even 1/8 of a turn, then turn it back to tighten and go back. Do that over and over. It does help to get the bolt out without breaking it. We're getting extremely close. It's turned almost 1 turn, as you can see. Now I'm going to go back in because it was getting harder. Okay, hopefully this time around it will come out the whole way. You can hear it squealing there. There we go. Now I can turn the torch off. Now if you don't have acetylene, you would just have to use your propane or your map torch for an extended period of time, because they are not as hot as the oxyacetylene. Now this bolt is hot, so I'm just going to grab it with pliers. Now if I go to take off the whole cowling, there's still an obstacle, and that is the carburetor. So what I do here is I loosen the carburetor bolts, and what you'll need is an E5 Torx, external Torx number 5. And what I do is I loosen all these bolts here. There's just 2 of them. Now the carburetor might be stuck with the gasket, so I just loosen it like that. I mean, you can loosen them completely if you want. And now this will give enough playroom to just slide this whole thing out. I know it's a pain doing it this way, guys, but I don't want a customer to come back with a bigger problem that I caused. So at this point here, I don't remove the recoil from the cowling. I just get the rope out. There we go. And I'll get the one off the recoil handle here. Now you can use a number 4 or number 4.5 starter rope for this. That is approximately 67 inches long. Now I would highly discourage you from using a rope that is bigger than a number 4.5, because what can happen is the rope will get stuck between the rotor that the rope goes on and the recoil housing. So the first thing I'll do here is get the rope in the handle and make quite a few knots here to make sure it doesn't come out. So now I'm going to get the rope inside the rotor here, but first of all, I'm going to spin it about 4 or 5 times. So if you look at your recoil like this, when you pull out, it wants to spring back that way. So you have to do your revolutions going the left way like this. And what I recommend is you find where the starter rope hole is in the rotor. It's right here, and the exit's right here. So I do about 4 to 5 turns with the hole for the rope here lined up to here. So I'm going to go here. So 1 turn. 2 turns. 3. 4. And what I do is I grab a small screwdriver, lock it in there. Then you don't have to hold it. Next, get your rope through here. And then make sure you line up the hole on the rotor to the hole on the recoil assembly. So you may have to take out your screwdriver. I do anyway, and bring it up closer. So now you just got to get the rope through there. And then just make a simple knot at the end. Pull it back. And a good idea is to spray some kind of penetrant or lube in there before you put this back on the machine. And the area to spray this in is right behind the plastic rotor here and the cowling. So in between, you spray it in there. It's going to get between the plastic rotor and the metal housing, and it will get into the recoil spring. It'll make it nice and smooth again, and it'll even make your recoil easier to retract. Now I'm just holding the rope. I will remove the screwdriver and let the rope go back in. Now, as you can see here, the rope is not retracting in all the way, so what I should have done is turn that rotor 5 times. But I'm kind of glad this happened, because I want to show you what you need to do if this happens to you. Now go back inside here. So you can see there's quite a bit of the rope out. I'm just going to grab it over here. And again, I'm using a very fine pair of pliers to get in there. Now when you do this, you want to make sure there's enough cord sticking out the back, because you need to pull the cord in to be able to do 1 more revolution like this to load up the spring. So even after 5 revolutions, guys, the handle is limp. So I'm just going to repeat that process. Now, because the pull cord handle is right up to here, I do have to pull it out a bit to give me some slack. Now I've got this lined up again like earlier. I will grab the rope again. And turn left again and tighten up that spring. Now the cord retracts properly. It's nice and tight. So I will leave it this way. It took 6 revolutions to load up the spring. Usually I get away with just 5, but it could be because the spring's getting older. And now I'm just going to reinstall the whole assembly here. Might be able to squeeze in through here. Now I want to show you some here. When you get around this part here in the installation, the cowling of the recoil must go over top of that. Here's a better look. just like that. If it doesn't want to go in, just move the carb a bit and make sure that the wires aren't stuck between the cowling and the block of the engine. Now what I'm going to do is just put some electrical tape on the wire that was burnt a bit earlier. Now I'm going to spray some lube in all the bolt holes. They had a bit of rust in them, so it'll make it easier. Okay, one more here. So there's one here, one over there, and the last one up top. And now I'll just tighten these up by hand. And now I'll retighten up the carburetor here. Get rid of this old gasket. I put a new gasket here and I just noticed that the primer line is broken right on the carb here. It's probably the original line, so it's a bit, it seems rotten a bit. And I'll disconnect it from the cover here. Now this piece of line is about 8 inches long, 8 to 10 inches. Now these parts go on the carburetor here. And let's not forget to hook up the primer line here, right on there. Now the choke knob, just line up the notches here. Push it in till it snaps in there. And I'll put a bit of anti-seize on these bolt knobs here. They're notorious for getting seized in there and breaking off. If you do this, they will never, ever be seized. Now this needs to go back. Again, you'll need your 8mm or 5/16 socket or nut driver. And now let's not forget the starter gear cover here. All right, I'll bring this machine down. So that's the entire repair process, the way I do it. Now you can do it the way you want. You can drill out the rivets, guys, if you want to. Just make sure to retrieve the old rivets. And it's retracting good. And let's give this a test run here. All good, guys. As many of you guys know watching the video today, these recoils are pretty cheap. The inside is all made of plastic. Here's what typically breaks on them. The plastic warps or the engine backfires and takes out some parts along with it. Sometimes you have to replace the entire rotor just to replace the spring. So what I tell my customers is to use your electric starter as much as you can and avoid using the recoil unless you really have to. If you do use the recoil, when you pull on the handle here, just make sure that the engine is engaged before you pull. And this is what I mean. So you pull out a bit, it's engaged, and then pull. Instead of going like this. It's jerking all the plastic parts that I just showed you and they will break. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope that the video has helped you to fix your machine. If it has, please like it, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.